bunch of maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Well, welcome to the GeoGearHeads. This is episode 163, where tonight we're going to be talking about ciphers, or the codes used to conceal information. Now, if you love your GPS more than the cachers you're with, you might be Gearhead-centric. In that case, you're in the right place. Let's get into this episode of GeoGearHeads. Now, Daryl, our longtime listeners know that we start off the show by talking about last week's question. What was that again? Because I've slept since then.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that I've actually slept much since then, so I think I actually remember the question, which should have been, if I remember correctly, what is the cipher used by geocaching.com, at least according to the cache page, to encrypt the hint? And I'm sure our guest tonight will know a lot more about that. So let's introduce Russ Atkinson, author of the Cliff Knowles series, to the show. Welcome, Cliff. And before we get too far, who was it that actually won that prize?
All right. Well, the winner is Ratten Kids with the right answer, which is ROT13, which stands for Rotate 13 Spaces.
Very good, and I kind of like the name because it kind of goes with that RAT13. And we actually had someone who did one of the autocorrects on their answer and submitted RAT13, so we could take that, but I love that one.
Daryl, I have to correct you on one thing, because you called me Cliff, and much as I identify in spirit with the character Cliff Knowles, I am not he, and I have been called Cliff by other people, so you're not alone. But the book, that's not an autobiography by a long shot.
I kind of hope not, actually. But I'm sorry about that. I'm going to blame my lack of sleep the last couple of weeks for that. Does that work?
Yeah, okay. I've used that excuse.
Well, Russ, does Cliff have some of your characteristics?
Well,
did you write yourself into him?
A little bit here and there, but let me put it like this. I gave when you start to write, I didn't know anything about writing novels. I just decided to sit down and do it. But one of the things I did know from having read things is that it's important for an author to know what he's writing about. And there are things that I know about. I'm a retired FBI agent, and I'm a geocacher. So I made the character an FBI agent and geocacher. And so in that sense, he's a lot like me in his interests and background. But I gave him a different personality, different physical look, different life events. So he's not me.
Very good. I always wonder about that. How much of writers do they put themselves into their characters?
Yeah, every now and then, there's definitely some things about him. I just went hiking with a friend today. He's not a geocacher, or we would have gone geocaching. But, there's something that came up, and it was very similar to a point in the book. And I basically said, here's what Cliff Knowles would have said in that situation, and I agree with him. So every once in a while, yes, I liken myself to that character.
Nice.
Well, then we do have a few of our listeners who are familiar with the series already and like it very much. But for those who maybe haven't checked it out, where's the best place for them to go to find out more?
Well, I do have a Cliff Knowles page, but you can actually find all the books on Amazon.com. That's where most of the people read about them. The link to my site is Cliff Knowles. That's all one word. CLIFFKNOWLES .ACKGAME ACKGAME.com.
Yeah, and they're available as Kindle books as well, which is the way I have one or two of those. I admit I still haven't had a chance to read. But they're Kindle books, so I can pick them up on my iPhone and read them when I'm waiting for the doctor or whatever.
That's right. And there's also, if you don't have a Kindle but you have another e-reader, you can get the first two books, Held for Ransom and Cashed Out, in other formats on a site called smashwords.com.
Ooh, interesting.
Well,
all right.
There
Well,
are a couple of questions in the Q&A already, and Russ, it's all for you. They want to know, are there any new books in the works?
I have a couple of ideas. Let's start with this. I'm actually working on a science fiction book. It's not a Cliff Knowles series book. I'm not 100% sure, since I'm all self-published and I do this just for fun. I'm not under any deadline, and I may or may not ever publish that one. I also have an idea for another Cliff Knowles book, but I would not expect it to have a lot of geocaching in it for all my geocaching fans, which I assume are the people asking the questions here. That's just because it's hard to keep working geocaching into the plots, and still give it any kind of variety.
Certainly. Well, thank you for that little inside tip.
I was going to say, what you should do with the sci-fi one is turn it into one of the Podio books. See if you can find someone to record it.
Well, that's an idea. I've actually, as soon as you self-publish, you start getting spam email from everybody trying to sell you services, and one of those is people who have authors record their own books in audiobook format, and I've been offered that service. Basically, I get to pay them, and they told me to record it. I can kind of record it without them, but I can't put out the CDs and all that kind of thing. So I've thought about it, but I don't particularly consider myself a voice actor, so I think I'll just pass on that.
Yeah, there's been a couple of authors who've really gotten some good notoriety from the Podio books, but it does take a lot of work. It's a totally different way of writing, too, so not the easiest thing, but they are a lot of fun. They're like radio plays more than anything else.
Okay.
And now that we are completely off subject, why don't we get back onto the ciphers and stuff? But you actually have some background with this from the FBI, and you're also working with another group or two on ciphers. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we start digging in? Sure.
Well, first, let's start with the thing that's most central to my cipher experience, and that is the American Cryptogram Association. I call it the ACA for short, and so does everybody in it. It's a non-profit educational / recreational organization. It's got a website, cryptogram.org, and anybody can join. There is a fee for it, but it's very modest, and that's where all the cipher types that are used, they were used originally for actual spying and that sort of thing, paper and pencil type ciphers from decades ago, centuries ago even, for some of them. Like the Rot 13 is a Caesar cipher. That goes all the way back to Julius Caesar. And that's one of the types that's used there. But they have all different kinds of ciphers explained there. When you join, you get books, you can get a CD, you get access to the website, which has various resources that you can download, and so on. So I've been a member there since the 1970s. I was president of the ACA for a few years earlier this decade after I retired. So it's something I encourage people to do if they have an interest in ciphers, and you can learn a lot of techniques that can be useful in geocaching and solving some of the puzzle caches. Then the other thing you asked me about was the FBI. I was not a cryptanalyst for the FBI, as some people think I was, but I worked a lot of high-tech crime, and that included a case that involved computer cryptography. And one of my books, Fatal Dose, is actually inspired by that particular case. It took some knowledge of modern cipher techniques to work through that case.
Well, you have a number of reference sites that you've provided, and the first one was from the ACA. But it's probably important to point out that there are probably more ciphers that people could use than you could possibly list on any site. So none of these sites are going to have everything, and that's why you need to have so many of the references.
Well, that's true, and I've provided not only the ACA site but links to other documents that are available, other websites that are available. For example, there's anagram sites. There are sites that will auto-solve some of the cryptograms and so on. I don't particularly encourage people to use automatic solvers because that sort of takes away the fun or point of a puzzle, but those are available out there on the web. There's ones that will help. For example, they'll place a crib. A crib is just a term we crypto people use for a section of plain text that we know exists. For example, out here on the West Coast, at least or in the Bay Area, the north coordinate is always going to begin 37 in this particular area. So if you have a cipher you're trying to solve, and you know or suspect that a 37 or 37 is at the beginning or near the beginning, that would be considered a crib. And there are various websites that will not solve the cipher for you, but they will help place that particular crib at some point in the cipher, for example. So that's among the resources and the links that I've provided.
Nice. Now, when I'm doing geocaching puzzles, that's exactly what I look for. I go to solve, in my area, it's 47, and that's the first thing I look for. It's got to be in here somewhere, and once I figure that out, the rest of it flows out. So it's a very good starting point on a geocaching puzzle.
Well, speaking of starting points, Chris, one of the things I think is most important on cipher sites or any puzzle site is look at the title, the name of the cache. That will often provide a hint as to how to solve the cipher. For example, I used there was a cipher puzzle that I did called I want to find that link. It was called Elementary Nervousness. It's now an archived cache, but the GC number on that was GCF1FD, if anybody wants to look at it. And it has a sentence in there. And the clever thing is, on that one, that the substitution method used was the periodic table of elements. Wow. So it's elementary nervousness. So it's not the only one I've seen. I've seen like elementary, my dear Watson, and all kinds of variations on the word element. Whenever you see that, look for a substitution system that involves the periodic table of elements. And that's just one example, but you can go on. The name may apply to maybe other types of clues in the name itself, the cache name. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's a good starting point. Another good starting point is the geographic location of the posted coordinates. We all know the posted coordinates are not the real coordinates, at least not normally, although I've seen puzzle caches where they are. But a lot of times it may, the posted coordinates may be at a related site that will help you decrypt the information on the cache page. And I don't want to give examples because the one I'm thinking of right now is a live puzzle cache and active, and I don't want to be a spoiler, but there are things like that. For example, here's one I'm making up. I don't know if there's a real example, but if it happened to be at a Sikh temple, for example, then you might consider to see if somehow Sanskrit or some other Indian language was involved in it, that sort of thing.
I was going to just ask if there was any good process that you'd suggest for people to figure out what type of cipher it is, besides just the title, Because I've run into many of them that there's nothing in the title. You're not getting a whole lot of clues from the text, especially the ones that are a little bit more hidden. Like where sometimes it's in the code, even still cipher in the HTML code. Is there a good way that you can tell people to get started and kind of work out what type of cipher they need to use?
Sure. Of course, this is even the ACA has some ciphers that they publish where they don't tell you the type, and part of the problem is to determine what the type is. Some of the things that I look for out here, again, in the western half of the United States, there's always 15 digits in the coordinates. So one of the things I look for is there a set of 15 things there? And if there is, whether it's 15 words, 15 pictures, 15 sentences, 15 links, then the first thing you want to look for is a simple substitution where each one of those things, whatever it is, represents a single digit. So there's a simple substitution type of cipher, and so that's a good start. If there's a different number, it may still be a simple substitution. For example, if it's a little more than 15, then they might include the words north and west, or the words point, for example. They might have something that substitutes for those. For ones that are hidden, there's lots of ways that coordinates are hidden, and generally speaking, almost every puzzle cache has them hidden. Sometimes they tell you how to find them. Sometimes you have to figure out what the puzzle is. In general, those types of ciphers, you could classify them as null ciphers or concealment ciphers. That's a technique that in general is centuries old. Even during Shakespeare's time, Bacon and others had systems of hiding coordinates. Now with the website, for example, one of the things I like to do is look for white space. So let's say there's between the text and the hint, there's a lot of white space. I like to just run the cursor over that and scroll over it, see if something pops up. It might be a white font against a white background, for example, and the text is right there looking at you, when you highlight it. So that's one method. Another thing is you say you look in the source code, see if it's hidden there. So in terms of hidden ciphers, that's a way to detect those kinds of things. They can be hidden in other things too, and things like graphics. But assuming that you find the text that you're supposed to find, then that's a whole new problem. Is how do you identify? If it looks like a bunch of numbers and letters, then there's all kinds of different ciphers that it could be. For example, there's substitution types. If you are looking at a string of letters and it looks like they have a pretty normal distribution of vowels and consonants, lots of E's and T's and A's and so on, it's probably what we call a transposition cipher. So there are lots of kinds of those things where things like route ciphers and so forth, columnar transposition ciphers. There are other ways to identify them. There's a cacher up, the name is GeoGearHeads. I don't know if you know him, either one of you. Chris, he's up in the Northern California area, close to the Oregon border, kind of halfway between down here in the Bay Area and up where you are. And he's done a whole bunch of puzzle caches based on ACA ciphers. And usually somewhere in the text of the cache description, there's a hint. For example, the type of cache he used, he might have anagrammed the name of the cipher type. If it was Caesar, might have the word salad might be in it. I don't know if he did that, but that's a typical example of what I'm talking about. So there's some places to look.
Nice. Now, you list you talked about auto solvers for some cryptograms, and I agree with you. Don't use them unless it's a last ditch effort. But are there many of these auto solvers for the type of ciphers, or is that pretty rare to come across?
About the only two that I know of that is pretty easy to find on the web are ones for simple substitution ciphers. Those are cryptograms, like you find in your Sunday papers, and then for cryptorhythms, which are different names for those, but basically the math puzzles where the famous one is send more money. I don't know if you've seen that one, but if it's send plus more, and the sum is money, M-O-N-Y, there's a unique solution to that. Each one of those letters stands for a particular digit, so for those kinds of things, there are auto solvers. Now, of course, I live in Silicon Valley, and I don't consider myself a programmer, but I've taught myself enough to do some of my crypto stuff, and so I've written auto solvers for my own use. And I know down here where you have programmers, every other house on the street, there's a programmer. A lot of them have written auto solvers, and so I know a number of geocachers who have them on their own computers. But in terms of web-based ones that all our other geocachers can use, I only know really of those two that I mentioned. Of course, just to get back to the very first question, Rock 13, we all have an auto solver on that. You can just click the link to decrypt right there on the page.
Exactly. That's kind of a cheat, though.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm thinking is for people who might be a little bit new at this or just not very good like I am, those auto solvers might be the solution to help you get into solving more of them, because it will kind of give you the hints maybe to get the key to decrypt it for the next one. Or is that just kind of hoping that there is an easy answer to help you learn?
Well, if it's a multi-stage thing, then yes, certainly I have seen a number of puzzle caches that have a cipher only has one part of it, and there's a lot of other parts that you have to do. It may be a visual puzzle, you have to interpret a picture or something. So if you use an auto solver to solve stage one, the cipher, you can end up getting something that will give you a good hint for the next stage. And so, yeah, that could work. In terms of learning how to solve the ciphers themselves, to me, that's where the ACA came in. I didn't know how to solve any of these until I joined the ACA, and reading the description. Well, one of the nice things about the ACA is that it has a magazine. It comes out 6 times a year, and it's only in print form. So you have to join and pay the annual fee. Like I say, it's a modest fee, but they send you a number of resources, not only the magazine, but a couple of books that give very detailed descriptions on the different ciphers. So once you understand how it is, then that helps you work backwards on how it works, the mechanics of it, whether it's laid out in a grid, or there are a lot of ciphers that are based on a 5x5 square that have 25 of the letters in it. For example, it's called a polybius square, and typically, at least in the ACA, they drop the J or combine it with the letter I, so that there's no J in the cipher. That would be a clue, for example, on a cipher type, if you saw on a page that it had quite a bit of text, and it had 25 letters, and all the letters except for the J, then it's probably based on one of the polybius square-based ciphers. There's a number of them. For example, the Playfair Cipher is one that's pretty well known. I've seen a lot of puzzle caches based on the Playfair Cipher. That happens to be a cipher it's the same cipher that John Kennedy used when he was a PT boat captain. A lot of our viewers probably heard the story where he got he was dead in the water. I don't think he was shot there. I think the boat gave out or something like that. I don't remember the details, but he swam to an island towing the boat, and used the radio to send his location in a Playfair Cipher. That code goes all the way back to last century, I think, or early 19th century, if I remember. So it's a common cipher, and it's based on a 5x5 square. So I got a little off track from the original question, but it goes back to your first question: how do you identify the cipher type? How to solve them? So the point is, this book describes the ciphers in detail. And then the magazine, in its history, has given articles, step-by-step articles on how to solve a lot of these. And these are all paper and pencil ciphers that can be solved without using a computer. When I first joined, there were no computers available to the ordinary person. I mean, there were mainframe computers, but the typical member did solve them all by paper and pencil. And so that's very helpful to a beginner. And the CD that you get has all these past issues, all the articles in them. So when you join, you can just go. You may have to go back and look at the description from 1978 or 1982 or whatever it was when they gave that step-by-step instruction. But that's one way to figure out, to learn how to solve ciphers.
Wow. So what are some of the ones that you've seen more often in geocaching that people can look out for?
Well, simple substitution is certainly the most common, but it takes a lot of different forms. Just to start with the simplest thing, the coordinates themselves can be enciphered. I've seen some that are just simple 15 letters, using A, B, C, D, E, or whatever, the first 15 letters of the alphabet, or a different set of 15 letters, and that can be significant. And you just have to figure it out, what each letter stands for one digit. I've seen other simple substitution ciphers that are based on the words. In other words, it's spelled out. There may be a message spelled out. It may be the coordinates simply written out in language, north 37, etc., etc. And the letters of that are enciphered with like a cryptogram. The cryptogram has two basic forms. One is one with spaces and punctuation. Then it can also have all the letters run together, so the spaces are not there. The ACA calls those patristocrats. There's a history there. The cryptogram is considered the aristocrat of puzzles, according to the ACA. That's the history. So a simple cryptogram, which you and I would call a cryptogram in the paper, or crypto quip, I've seen them, that's called an aristocrat in the ACA. And if you remove all the punctuations and spaces, that's a patristocrat. So I don't know why they put the P there, but in any event, that's what it means. It's without the punctuation. And so that's harder to solve without that extra information. So I've definitely seen those two a lot. Even if it's not the coordinates, it may be a story that's encrypted. So first you have to decipher the story and then figure out from the story the rest of the puzzle, or find the coordinates in the story. The Playfair Cipher is one I've mentioned. I've seen the cryptorhythms I talked about with, you have to solve a mathematical problem. I've got one myself called undecimal, and I'll give everybody a hint right here. So it's not a spoiler, but it'll get some people started who don't know it. The title again is undecimal. That's UNDECIMAL. Well, some people may think the un is just a negative, that it's not a decimal. And in fact, in a sense, that's true. But that happens to be a regular word. If you look the word up in the dictionary, it means base 11 in math. So that's where everybody's getting lost. They're trying to solve it thinking it's a base 10 arithmetic problem, just like you learned. But in fact, there are 11 different letters shown there, and each one stands for a digit. So you have to be able to do arithmetic in base 11 to solve it. And there are autosolvers that will do that for them. So it's not that impossible, but that's the first hint. That's not a hint on the cache page, but if you're a listener here to the Cache Maniacs, you know, there's a starting point for that one. So but base 11 or base 10, I've seen a lot of ones just in ordinary base 10 ciphers, cryptograms. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of other types that I've seen. A lot of the ACA types are used. I've seen elsewhere things like the Caesar cipher we've talked about, the ROT13 we know about, but a simpler form of that is the ROT13 is a specific type that's unique in the sense that you can go forward or backward in the alphabet 13 spaces to decrypt it. That's why they only have the first half of the alphabet above and the second half of the alphabet below. You can go either direction. A encrypts as N, and N encrypts as A, and so forth. But the Caesar cipher actually started where you, Julius Caesar used it where he would encipher going 3 steps forward in the alphabet, not 13. So A would go to D, you go B, C, D, 3 steps. But D wouldn't go to A. D would be enciphered 3 steps farther, you know, E, F, G. So if you had a D, you would encipher it as a G. And the person on the other end would go backwards that way. So that's another clue. If you see anything about Julius Caesar or Roman times in the title or in the cache description, that may be a hint to use Caesar cipher. Look to see if it's a Caesar. It also may be a hint to look for Roman numerals. That's another type of hint, another type of cipher that I've seen. If you want to call that a cipher, it's basically substituting the Arabic numerals we're used to with Roman numerals. They can be hidden in the text or outside the text.
That's a good idea. I haven't seen that one. But now I'm going to have my eyes open for it.
Yes. Yeah, and a lot of times there may even just be a graphic. You know, look at the background graphic. Sometimes that'll be a hint. If you see a picture of a Roman chariot or whatever it may be, look for Roman numerals or Caesar cipher.
We have a hider around here who's a graphic artist and has hidden the clues sometimes in the data itself for the picture. Not in the picture itself, but in the data for the picture. So you have to download it and open it up in a graphics editing program to be able to see the background information of it.
Oh, yes.
Oh, and that took some doing. But he's also done it with. Are you familiar with the old Mad magazine?
I am.
Where they would have a picture in the back and you would have to fold it in a certain way.
Fold in. I know the cache you're talking about. I actually solved that. I had to print it out, but yes.
Exactly. We worked hard, working on the computer with it until we realized if we print it out and fold it, it makes a lot more sense.
Yes. So. Yes. I'm a Mad Magazine fan from way back. So we have any more questions from our viewers, our listeners?
Well, we actually have one that goes to hiding, which is from Limax. He wants to know what would be the best approach to writing a hill climber.
Okay, now we're getting into a sophisticated technique for solving ciphers. A hill climber, you have to be a programmer to write one. It's not something you can do on paper and pencil because it involves the program improving itself over thousands and thousands of iterations of doing the same thing. I'll give you a brief description of what a hill climber is. Basically, a hill climber starts with you have this text, and you have to know what type of cipher it is for starters. And it could be a simple substitution cipher. Let's say it's one that you know it's a cryptogram, but you haven't been able to break it. So you don't know what the alphabet is that was used to substitute letter for letter. So what you do is you create a random alphabet and decrypt it with that and see what you get and see how good it is. It's not going to come up with the right answer, of course. It's just going to be garbage. But then you try switching 2 letters in your key alphabet and see, and then you have to test the output and see, is it any better? Do you have anything that looks any more like words? And if you do that hundreds of thousands of times or millions of times and save the ones that are better, all of a sudden you make a random switch and you start getting like a TH together, for example, or a THE appear somewhere. Okay, well that's going to score a little higher. If you have to devise a scoring algorithm to see if it's more like English than it was before. But if it is, then you keep that as your high, and you keep doing that until the thing keeps improving, and eventually you will get to a high point to where no matter how you change the key, you can't get any higher. And if you're lucky, that'll be the solution. But typically, hill climbers they'll reach something that looks pretty good, but it may not be the right solution. And so you have to start over again and scramble everything, scramble your whole key, start all over again. But the basic steps are choose a random key, switch it in some way, maybe switching two letters. There are other ways to switch the key, but you alter the key. If the decryption that you get from a new key is better, then you save that the way that it's been altered. If it isn't, you go back to what it has and you try another way, make another alteration and see if that's better. You keep doing that again and again, and then when it finally reaches a point where you can't improve it anymore by swapping letters or whatever alteration it is, you check to see if you've got a solution. If you don't, you basically just start all over again. So there are little ways to tweak it. There's a lot of different ways to try to determine if you've got a good solution, if your solution is getting better. The way that I use, and most of the crypto people that I know use, is we use what's called tetragram frequencies to score the decryption. So let's say you create a random key and you decrypt your cryptogram, and it looks like garbage to the naked eye. But what you do is you check every set of 4 letters that come out. The first, letters 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you check letters 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And you see if those 4-letter groups appear in normal English. Obviously something like THAT, the word that, is very frequent in English. So if you have a table of frequent cryptograms, it's going to be a big table. You have to have 26 by 26 by 26 by 26 array in your program that has a score for every one of those combinations. Most of them are going to be full of zeros because most combinations don't appear in normal English. But all the common words or parts of words, anything ending in ing, for example, and so on, you're going to have points in your table that score how frequent that tetragram is in normal English, and you just scan all the way across your output to see, and just add up the score for each one of those tetragrams. And if you make enough swaps and enough changes, all of a sudden some of your tetragrams are going to be a little bit frequent. Instead of all zeros, you're going to have some 1s and 2s in there. So that's a better solution than you had before. So it's hard, it gets technical, and I don't think we can go a whole lot farther on a show like this in the explanation, but devising a good scoring algorithm is critical to answer the question from Limax.
Wow. That seems like, not only is it technically challenging, but developing that level of a computer program is, well, that's beyond me, I would say.
Yeah, we definitely don't have time to be getting into that this show. But I'm thinking that you also have a Google Plus group that he might want to check out for some of that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, a lot of those things people could join. It's called Recreational Cryptanalysis, 2 words. When I first created it, it was just for ACA members. But then the ACA created its own separate group, and so I made mine open to the public. But unfortunately, with Google Plus community, it's a community, not a Google group. Just for those who look, those are 2 different things in Google. So go to Google Communities and search for recreational cryptanalysis. And if there's quite a number of people. I think they're all ACA members, but I'm not sure. Certainly anybody can join. But I'm the moderator of that group. So if you want to join that, you can contact me through geocaching.com or any other way, and just ask to join. I think you can just click and ask to join. It's officially a closed group. I can't change that to open, but what I'm telling you now is that anybody who wants to join, I'll allow in. So just send me an email if you can't figure out how to do it any other way, and I'll send you an invitation. And you can, once you're in, you can ask people how do you do this.
Probably another good resource for those who are new into ciphers and cryptanalysis, so that they can learn to do it better.
Yes, it tends to be a lot of ACA members who are computer solvers, so it's not going to be great for a beginner, but everybody's very helpful there. I know that anybody who's new and asks a question, you will get help on ciphers there.
Perfect. Well, you had some sample geocaches. Before we take off, did you want to run through a few of those?
Yeah, okay. Let me look at that document here. Some of the ones that I recommend are, for example, one of my early caches was called Hail Caesar, and it was a Caesar cipher. And in fact, I used that very cipher as an example in my book, Cached Out. That's the first puzzle that Cliff Knowles has to solve. Anyway, the GC code on that is GCGHGW. So if you want a little practice on that, there's one you can try. I have a couple of more that I'll just give the coordinates to. These are all archived, so there's no spoiler there. One called FRAC, F-R-A-C. GC code is GC1R3YN. And that's a fractionated Morse cipher. And if you read the notes there, there's very detailed descriptions on hill climbers for that. So Limax, if he hasn't already looked at that, might want to check that out. And because the different programmers here in the Valley describe the different techniques they've used to improve theirs. I have another one called Morbit, M-O-R-B-I-T. The GC code on that is GC1WA3K. And so that's another ACA type of cipher. I've seen that used in several different places, geocaching puzzles, not just my own. Some of the ones that I liked, I already mentioned elementary nervousness. There's another one here that's archived called As Dizzy as It Gets. That's from Kablooey, well-known puzzle cacher here. GC code on that is GCGBAT. Since it's archived, I don't mind giving a spoiler. The graphics on that page, all you have to do is paste them into a graphics program, just like Windows Paint, and just expand the view. Just keep enlarging and enlarging, and there's some very small numbers buried at the very center of the graphics, and the coordinates are right there. So that's a good fun one. Another one is called Ceremonial, CEREMONIAL, by Fizzy Magic, well known to a lot of us who've done the Fizzy Challenge. That GC code is GCCBEC, and that's based on pseudonumerology. It says so right in the cache description. And again, that's archived, so it's not a spoiler. One called Revenge of the Nerds, GC code GCGGT1. So that's one that uses resistor color codes. I've seen a lot of those. You asked me earlier about that, and that's a type that I have seen. If the word resist is anywhere in the name of the cache or in the description on the cache page, look for resistor color codes. You'll see colors described somewhere in a graphic or in the text, and you can pull the codes out. Just Google that if you don't know what it is, and you find those little widgets, electronic devices, resistors have colored stripes on them, and all those stripes represent numbers.
Exactly.
So there's some they can try if they're interested in cipher puzzles, ciphers.
Excellent, and we'll have links to all of those, plus all the other resources that you provided in the show notes, so that anyone can go and check them out.
Great.
Well, thank you again for joining us tonight, and also thank you for the book that you donated as a prize a few shows back. I'm sure that was much appreciated by the lucky winner as well. Hopefully they've had a chance to get through it, but I don't think they've told us that they have yet.
I think that was Geocachers who won that, if I'm not mistaken, with a K, Geocachers. I'm not positive.
Yeah, I can't remember for sure, but yeah, I do remember it. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully they've enjoyed it. I haven't heard back otherwise, so we'll assume that they've enjoyed it.
Yeah, all right. I like to think everybody's enjoyed my books, but anybody who's ever written a book and needs to have some thick skin, you go on Amazon, and they're not all going to be good reviews out there.
What?
Oh, absolutely.
I've done pretty well.
Excellent. And we will have links to the Cliff Knowles site in the show notes as well, so if you want to check those out, you'll find them there.
Great.
Now, we have a new question for you next week, which is going to be pretty easy. So you'll want to have this to us by 9 p.m. Eastern on February 18th, or that's 6 p.m. Pacific for those of you on the West Coast. And this is going to be an email with the title, Question 164, and that's going to go to GeoGearHeads@CacheManiacs.com. And the question that we have for you is actually, what is a question about puzzle caches that you'd like to ask for next week's show? So this is going to be pretty easy. Just ask us any question, and we may or may not be able to use it on the show. That's all you need to do to be entered into the drawing for another prize from coinsandpins.com. So remember to email that to GeoGearHeads@CacheManiacs.com with the title Question 164, and make sure to include your geocaching.com screen name. Have that to us by February 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and you could be entered in for that prize from coinsandpins.com.
Well, Daryl, I'm here to introduce the upcoming shows, and you gave away the first one. Next show, that's going to be February 19th, 1 week from tonight, we're talking about puzzles Q&A. So if you want to know more about puzzle caches, that's the show to go to. After that, February 26th, we're talking about bicycle maintenance. March 5th, we're going to talk about Project GC, or project-gc.com. Great website. In fact, I was just there today looking at some things. March 12th, we're doing another one of our very popular randomized show. This is Randomized 32. March 19th, we're doing a show on attending mega events. So you're going to want to tune in for that.
Check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cashomaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Christoph Nauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2015 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with a Cashomaniac.